Handsome Hockey Podcast. 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 Handsome Hockey Podcast.
Handsome Hockey Podcast.
All right, everybody. Thank you for your patience. We are back, episode 49 of the Handsome Hockey Podcast, Taylor's version.
It's only 10 minutes.
Yeah, hey, that might be better for our listeners. Thanks for stopping by today. We are happy to be here in Portland, Oregon. My name is Jake, and across from me is...
Evan! You were talking about the whale earlier. I had to.
Yeah, the whale just brings me so much joy. We haven't recorded for a couple of weeks. We put out 2 episodes and episodes on back-to-back days a couple of weeks ago, and then I again went on vacation. So
rested like God after making humanity.
Yeah, except I was chasing around toddlers, so not so much.
I mean, that's probably what God feels like most of the time.
Yeah, but it's his fault. Like.
Her fault. God is clearly Alanis Morissette. Didn't you watch Dogma?
I did, and I forgot.
I put more religious authority in Dogma than the actual Bible.
Since we last recorded, some big things happened. Some trucks drove by. Some big things happened.
Haven't turned the volume up.
Yeah. Some big things happened. Some fun things happened. Ken Holland was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame.
For his beautiful GMing abilities, right? Yeah.
I'm not mad that Ken Holland was inducted into the Hall of Fame. The dude who architected a couple of cup teams, was a significant piece in the first 2 Wings Cup teams in 97 and 98. Don't get me wrong. Like, this is a very deserved honor.
But his late GM track record is fairly hilarious compared with like his pre-salary cap GM record.
And by late, you mean the last, 14 years.
Right. Yeah. He's essentially driven 2 teams into the ground by handing out hugely long salaries to bit and over the hill players.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. Edmonton's clicking along really well right now.
Yeah. It seems to sort of weirdly be working.
They did lose to the Red Wings, which was funny because they interviewed Ken Holland before the game. And I was like, oh man, Edmonton's going to thrash us. And then they didn't. I was like,
yeah, this is a good point to talk about Mikko Koskinen's weird season. He's 9-1 with a nice goals against average, and he looks like shit. Like, how is this possible? Oh wait, yeah, Connor McDavid is scoring redonkulous goals in front of him.
Yeah, and I think, doesn't Draisaitl have more points than McDavid right now? Like,
I don't doubt it.
It's absurd. Edmonton is totally ridiculous. But that ridiculous goal that you are pointing to, where he just takes the puck out of the zone, skates around for a bit, realizes that he's the fastest man alive, and dances between 4 defensemen and scores.
Yeah, if you, for some reason, don't know what we're talking about, please just Google it. Like, just Google the Connor McDavid goal. It was unbelievable. He was trying to be magnanimous. Like, he has the puck. He kind of like circles out of the zone. He's waiting for help. He's waiting for somebody to pass to. And then he inadvertently okey-dokes the entire defense because he realizes, oh, I have a clear path to the net somehow through 4 defenders. And he's so fast. He just made them all look stupid. The entire Rangers defense just looked like complete pylons on the ice.
It's not so much his speed, it's his ability to do what he does at speed,
and
like
also
his stick handling while skating faster than probably anybody else in the NHL is absurd. Like,
also his acceleration is absolutely insane. He goes from like kind of a slow cruising pace to slamming on the gas pedal past 4 people, like in
like 2 strides,
right? He does things that nobody else can do, and I would say you probably can't teach.
Yeah, there's like a freak of nature aspect to what he does. Getting back to the Hall of Fame, also inducted this year. I almost said indicted, and I was like, wow. I've been watching too much politics lately. Jerome McGinley, Marion Hossa, Doug Wilson, and Kim St. Pierre, as well as Ken Holland.
Yeah.
He is Alberta's problem now.
Another interesting story is Jerome McGinley spent a fair amount of time in Alberta. And as we were reminded in a lot of sort of retelling of his careers, was subject to quite a bit of racism on and off the ice and in how he was selected. I mean, I believe, the year that he won the Rocket Richard Trophy, the Lester B. Pearson Award, and a whole slew of other awards, another white player was named the captain of the Calgary Flames. Jerome McGinley, one of the greatest ambassadors and players of color that we've seen, was the best player on his team and wasn't decided to be befitting of the C. So hopefully, we can kind of honor him in a way that tells the real story of his career and what he faced and really the trailblazing that he was able to do.
It was later in his career when both he and a number of people started kind of coming out and saying, these are the types of things that he faced as he was coming up, trying to make it to the NHL, and then even after being in the NHL. And for him to have persevered through that harassment and that treatment, and to have the distinguished career that he had, it's truly remarkable. We've seen these same things, derail the careers of other players. And that's not to say that those players are less than Jerome McGinley in like mentality or perseverance. What I am saying is we really should laud Jerome McGinley for, not only surviving, but thriving in an environment that was openly antagonistic towards him for most of his career.
Yeah. And even, in the 90s, 2000s, this is not an old story. It's a new story of the racism in hockey. So yeah, congrats to him for making a Hall of Fame career with such a headwind. Someone who didn't face such adversity and succumb to a flesh-eating virus was Marion Hossa. And he was also part of this Hall of Fame crew. And then Doug Wilson, Kim St. Pierre, someone I wasn't familiar with, but I dug into her story a little bit. She was a dominant goalie in international play for Team Canada. She won 3 gold medals in 2002, 2006, 2010, 5 IAHF gold medals, 4 silvers, and a Women's 4 Nations Cup.
Show off.
Yeah, kind of what I was thinking looking at her bona fides is like, oh, wow, you were incredible.
If there's one thing I've learned in my life, it's that everybody hates an overachiever. It's great to see the Hockey Hall of Fame inducting women into its ranks. Something tells me, and that's called, history, that there's way more women that deserve to be inducted. And so hopefully, as these classes continue, the Hockey Hall of Fame can maybe go out of its way to add to the list of women who have been inducted because of the fact that they've probably been neglected for, decades.
Definitely. And an interesting part of her story, it's kind of a bummer because it's caging a women's hockey story as beholden to men's hockey, but besides Men on Rum, she is one of the only women's players to have skated with NHL players in sort of any capacity, in that she practiced with the Montreal Canadiens in 2008. Apparently, Carey Price had the flu.
So that's what they're calling him being disturbed by her awesomeness on the ice. He was like, I am less sick.
I'm out with the sickness. But it was really cool in the Hall of Fame kind of drudgery to find out about her career.
Speaking of people who are maybe no longer heading to the Hockey Hall of Fame, Bob Murray resigns as GM of the Anaheim Ducks after being put on administrative leave when an internal investigation brought up, what everybody had been saying for years.
Yeah, which is this guy's kind of a high-strung asshole and not a very nice guy, and
created a very caustic work environment for everyone.
Apparently, this NHL anonymous tip line that they set up after the Blackhawks Kyle Beach scandal worked. And in that, he was the guy that was sort of like very quickly anonymously reported on by everyone that knows him and works with him. Like, it's kind of funny that happened to a Portland architecture firm. They like got big enough where they like hired an HR person, and then the HR person like was instantly inundated with like several women in the office saying that they were harassing him. It's like, oh, I guess when you sometimes start listening, you figure out that you haven't been listening long enough. Bob Murray notably once was accused in court of throwing a chair at a woman in a press box after a loss in Detroit. I believe he wasn't convicted, but it just kind of illustrates where there's smoke, there's usually fire.
Also breaking into the news this week, COVID. Hey.
Oh, hey. I hadn't heard of you for a while.
Like about 6 minutes. Yeah. Welcome back into NHL news. We had seen throughout the season various players, kind of like seeming like one here, two there, minor setbacks. The Sharks had a number of folks at one time on the COVID list. However, the Senators are they're just breaking all the rules, and they currently have 10 players on the COVID list, which forced the NHL to postpone their 3 games this week. They were supposed to go on an East Coast swing, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So their games this week were all postponed, which will, of course, mean the schedule will be compacted for them, and the teams that they didn't play end up playing later in the season. However, good that they cancel these. I think the big thing here, the big reason why it was canceled is it was a Canadian team coming into the United States.
Yeah. Crossing borders is very tough right now, and you can create an international incident very easily. So
yeah, we don't need Trudeau and Biden arm wrestling or anything.
Actually, I would fucking pay to see that, but that's beside the point.
Yeah, like
do you think Biden's like got wiry old man?
He's got
arms?
grandpa strength.
Yeah, and he's from Scranton.
Yeah,
but
is that where he's from? I hadn't heard that 17,000 times.
Right, but Trudeau's like actually probably actively going to the gym, and maybe has a personal trainer. So that would be an interesting handicap. I would love to see the Vegas odds for an arm wrestling match between Trudeau and Biden.
I lean Trudeau on this, but I'd love to be proven wrong.
That would be so hilarious.
Like Joe Biden winks at the camera before he just pins Trudeau's arm down, and you're like, "Go! Whoa!"
That would be amazing.
Yeah. So the Senators, and this is a number of their young talented players. Josh Norris is out. Drake Batherson's out. They've got themselves a bit of a crisis here, because as we definitely saw last year and the year before, players don't always bounce right back from COVID. Sometimes it takes a couple of days, sometimes it takes weeks, sometimes it took all season.
That was also before vaccines for the most part, but like
true.
Ryan O'Reilly just had COVID and he's still not very good yet. So I don't know. We'll see. And it seems like the only people that are salty about the situation are Sharks fans who, I don't know, didn't have enough players with COVID to stop their games from being played. And so Sharks fans are like, our AHL team had to play. And to which we point out that the Senators are not all that much better than the Sharks AHL team.
There's no Brady Tkachuk down in the AHL team, but other than that, it's just like a ragtag bunch of it's basically like the Sandlot, where Brady Tkachuk is Benny the Jet Rodriguez and everybody else.
Brady Tkachuk is definitely like heavy with the Sandlot vibes. I like that.
Yeah, Josh Norris is. I'm not gonna dive in. I could go. What we really need to know is who's and I think it's probably Josh Norris. Let's see other things.
Back to the Blackhawks.
Yay!
We're gonna get one piece of shitty news about the Blackhawks out of the way, and then actually have like positive things to talk about a bunch of Blackhawks. I don't know, kind of weird.
I might phrase them negatively though, just to keep up with the vibes.
Yeah, what's happened in the latest scandal news is that there's been a lot of pressure on the Blackhawks to come out and financially help John Doe 2 with counseling services or paying for counseling services because they were obviously put in the position where they could have stopped Brad Aldrich's abusing, but did not. So it's a very clear line between the Blackhawks' decision-making and where they are today. The league also, Rick West had put this on the league. He's like, oh, don't you think, the league should handle this? And the league sort of controversially, sort of not deferred and said, no, this is the Blackhawks problem. Why should the combined money of 31 teams that did nothing wrong pay for the sins of one team? And I think there's some...
Despite the fact that they're doing the same thing for Kyle Beach.
Right.
Yeah.
It does smack of some sort of like corporate, like pushing it away. It does smack of some circling the wagons for sure.
Gary Bettman stuffed that right down into his Wranglers. He was like, nope, not going there. And then he walked around Lake Tahoe again.
Yeah, indications are that the Blackhawks may end up paying for John Doe 2's counseling. But the way they're going about it in court and in the media and the press and like asking for his medical records and school records and like really doing a deep dive into this kid's life is kind of some bullshit. Like, do I sort of understand that, maybe you want to see how much money you're on the hook for? I can understand that. But in the scheme of it being a professional hockey franchise, it's going to be fucking nothing. It's going to be a game check for your fourth line grinder is how much this kid's counseling is going to probably cost for the rest of his life. I don't know. It's a fairly insane proposition to just try and go through all these corporate machinations instead of just saying, yeah, we'll pay for it. Like, I get that they want to prevent a precedent being set, but they also set a really shitty precedent themselves. Like,
they are the precedent.
Yeah. So, that should be the precedent that should be set is if you fuck up like this and one of your own employees goes on to abuse elsewhere, you should be on the hook for a bunch of counseling money. You should be on the hook for a whole lot more if that's what happens. I mean, if anything, they should feel fortunate that they have gotten off so freely with probably just paying for a couple of people's counseling.
Yeah. What this does is if they say, yes, we'll pay for his counseling, one, it's an admission of guilt while there is pending legal action.
Right.
And it removes their ability to claim plausible deniability.
Exactly.
And so from a legal standpoint, they're doing the right thing for their team.
From an ethical standpoint,
from every other fucking standpoint, you're douchebags.
And it's also the intersection of like the shittiest parts of legal corporate culture and the shittiest parts of hockey culture just in one. And it's like,
skipping down the street hand in hand, giving the middle finger to everyone it's wrong. Like, that's exactly what it is.
But what it also does for the Blackhawks PR is it really kind of solidifies the team as the bad guys and the perpetrators in what the lengths that they're going to say we weren't at fault. Even if it's just financial and like their fiduciary duty. Like, it's still bullshit. They could come out and settle. But instead, they're filing motions to dismiss the case, continue the case, and after Rocky Wirtz comes out and says, yeah, we're going to settle, they kind of show that they're going to play legal hardball from here on out. So I think what they need to realize is there is still damage to be done. The product on the ice is not very good. There is still fan goodwill to be carved away. And I think they need to tread more lightly and, I don't know, make some better decisions.
Yeah, it just kind of shows that removing Bowman and Alan McKissick from the team from the organization really didn't remove the like pervasive awfulness of that organization. And so we're going to have to move forward, and hopefully we'll see these trials move forward and that the Blackhawks lose. And in those losses, they admit guilt and ultimately do all of the things that they should have been doing all this time. It's just going to be a bummer because it'll then be like legally required of them instead of something they did of their own volition and goodwill.
Kudos to Rick Westhead, who is really, continuing to keep the fire burning underneath the NHL and the Blackhawks about this. He put out a really amazing interview with the mother of John Doe 2, in which she outlines some pretty hard to hear facts about how this situation has affected her son and her and where he is right now. I mean, he can't afford health insurance, which is part of the reason that they're seeking this sort of counseling money. It's also a story about how hockey chews up and spits out people. I mean, between him and Kyle Beach, we know that this has happened many, 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 many other times without receiving the kind of attention it has now. So I think that reinforces how the NHL needs to be better about the aftermath of the scandal moving forward, and how the Blackhawks need to be more conciliatory and more open to maybe making a poor legal precedent to do the right thing.
So do you want to talk about the good thing that happened from the Blackhawks?
Well, there was like a couple good things that happened. It's really weird to talk about good news for the Blackhawks these days, but it's welcome. I mean, I suppose I still consider myself a fan, but I don't know. It's definitely taken a dent. So yeah, it's definitely nice to see some positive storylines. So the first one of them you wrote about.
Yeah, this came out about a week ago or so now. In celebration of Native American Heritage Month, Marc-Andre Fleury worked with Ojibwe artist Patrick Hunter to create a unique mask for him to wear during games this season. The mask is decorated it's a black mask with feathers and flowers on it. Very stylized feathers and flowers. It's really cool. You should take a look at it, Google it. It's really great.
Yeah, it is fucking sweet looking.
Yeah, like he should wear it's so much better than his regular mask. He should wear it for the rest of the year. The mask is decorated with 7 feathers, which each represent one of the 7 grandfather teachings of the indigenous nations and tribes throughout the Midwest. The artist also incorporated flower iconography that works 2 ways, both with native heritage. The artist said that these types of flowers would have been found woven into Native American dress and clothing, but they also work with Marc-Andre Fleury's last name, which is Flower. So Fleury will be wearing the mask throughout this month. What is really kind of startling about this, before I get into that, the first thing is this is awesome. It's really cool that Marc-Andre Fleury and the Blackhawks went out of their way to do something to celebrate Native American Heritage Month. They are obviously a team that has a lot of, shall we say, disturbing Native American iconography attached to it. So for them to really dive in and have some really powerful positive iconography is an awesome change.
Yeah, I mean, this coming on the heels of the fact that they've started doing land acknowledgements, and they've made their TV rights holders show the land acknowledgement before home games. Yeah, they've made some interesting steps. Is it changing the logo? No, but they're trying to do everything but, and I don't know, you get half a cookie, I guess, for that.
This comes in very stark contrast to the mask that was painted for Marc-Andre Fleury to start the year, in which the artist complained that his first, I think, 3 or 5 designs were rejected as racist.
By the league? By the team.
By the team. And that, all of the kind of scenes of native culture that he could conjure up to paint on a mask were racist. And this really shows how, even more how wrong and awful that guy was. I forget his name, and I don't feel like going back and talking about him again.
Lazy.
Yeah. But it also shows, and we talked about this with the PHF preview when we were talking about the trans inclusion policy and how there were no trans women on this advisory board that created this policy. When you want to honor a culture or create something that includes people, you should actually include those people. And so reaching out to Patrick Hunter to do the artistry for this was super cool. And, kudos, very small kudos to the Blackhawks and Marc-Andre Fleury for moving forward with this.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if him, having this mask made had anything to do with the pushback that the other mask kind of received online.
I kind of don't care.
Yeah, I don't really care, but I'm just kind of curious. It's like,
it's entirely possible.
Were you listening enough to realize that you kind of did a misstep and you corrected it, or did you just figure this was a nice thing to do? I don't know. Just curious from that angle. As we talked about before, Marian Hossa was added to the Hall of Fame. He was an amazing two-way forward for all the now sort of maligned cup teams that the Blackhawks put out. He participated in the Hall of Fame skate and was promptly eaten alive by flesh-eating bacteria live before a studio audience.
He erupted from the net.
It was really gruesome.
Yeah. I mean, I watched the whole thing, but I was aghast the whole time.
Yeah, it was sort of like a very small version of the movie The Blob. Yeah, it was just like this pink goo that just kind of...
And quicker.
Yeah. It was really, really going to be tough to get that out of my head. Anyways, the best Blackhawks news this week. Jeremy Colleton was fired. Amazingly, outlasting Joel Quenneville twice. But happy trails to Jeremy Colleton. I'm fairly certain he's going to come back into the league someday and probably be good, because that's kind of how a lot of these young coaches that flame out and then eventually come back end up being. But his defensive system, if he had a defensive system, did not work. And his coaching style was, how shall we say, deferential. He famously, after calling a timeout late in the game, handed the clipboard to Jonathan Taves, who drew up the play.
Jonathan Taves, who has yet to score a goal this season, to draw up the play.
Epitome of hilarity. Also, he still looks like a college kid back there, and that's going to be a weird look when Jonathan Taves looks noticeably older than you.
All NHL coaches should only be 36 years old, but look like they're 64. That's a new rule.
So the Blackhawks named Derek King interim coach, and results have been pretty good so far. In the 3 games that they've played under him versus Colleton, the defensive stats are noticeably better. I guess the team kind of defensive effort is greatly improved, and fairly obvious that Colleton had just kind of lost the room and wore out his time. The Blackhawks also have since hired Rob Cookson as assistant coach and elevated Mark Crawford,
Mark Crawford?
Yeah, to be associate coach on interim head coach Derek King's staff. So also Mark Crawford, problematic in his own right.
Mark Crawford, who famously screamed at Scotty Bowman over the glass while Scotty Bowman laughed at him.
Yeah, I don't think that's what has him in sort of a lot of people's doghouse.
Oh, no, he's a treat.
But yeah, interesting to see that they're out with the coach and then elevating other problematic figures while under the airs of a scandal. But to kind of, learn more about Jeremy Colleton, I went and did Handsome Hockey's first ever investigative reporting, and that I went undercover as a do-nothing coach on our hockey team. And boy, was it an experience. I was a little injured and wasn't going to play, and so I decided to show up in a suit and tie at the rink, get a clipboard, and do some yelling. And, I think I tested how effective being a hockey coach that doesn't actually coach works. I mean, I think we played pretty well.
We got beat.
Yeah, but that's all we do.
Yeah.
But I think we got beat less that game than we usually do.
We had an effective game plan of no game plan, and it was shockingly effective in that I did my normal like pretend to play defense and then go play forward thing. That was good. We have some guys on the team who either haven't played for a while or are just starting out, and we tried to put them in positions to succeed. And yeah, we only lost by a couple goals.
Yeah, we got pucks deep and we rolled all 2 of our lines, and we did okay. I think it kind of speaks to how motivating it is to just have a person with a suit on your bench. Even in the case of the Blackhawks, if he looks like he's 12. I actually did go through the motions of handing Jake the clipboard during a timeout just to see how that felt. And it's a little degrading, a little demeaning. Like, to hand over such important power.
Yeah, I think I wrote dirty words on it too. So it was great.
Yeah, to kind of sum the whole thing up, I just wrote and colored in a giant yes on my clipboard. And I don't know.
Held it up for motivations.
I'm a yes man.
In actual real hockey news, the Pittsburgh Penguins are about to be sold. As of this recording, it has not been formally voted on by either the financier or the league itself. However, all signs point to this happening perhaps on Thursday. This is Wednesday, so yes, tomorrow. Or if you're listening to this on Thursday, today, or if you're listening to this on Friday, yesterday. I think I've covered all of my bases as to like when this might get out. There are no final figures being bandied about as of yet, but the Fenway Sports Group, which famously owns the Boston Red Sox and Liverpool Football Club in England, are buying the Pittsburgh Penguins. They're kind of led by John Henry, who is a billionaire. And
not that John Henry.
No, not that John Henry. I think a lot of people are looking at this as a positive. Fenway Sports Group has a history of spending a lot on their teams and not believing in rebuilds, looking rather to retool as opposed to rebuild. I mean, that's got to be exciting for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, you can see how Mario wanted to be a part of that.
Yeah. As Evan just alluded to, Mario Lemieux is reportedly going to be staying on as a much smaller minority owner in this. He'll make a cool couple $100 million on this deal.
But it'll be mostly other people's money paying the players.
Yes, exactly. This time. And so he will be sticking around in some capacity. Not sure what exactly that all entails as of yet. The Penguins franchise earlier this year was valued at $845 million.
Only
$845 million.
That seems like a screaming deal.
That figure would be good for the NHL. The Penguins valuation came in right around the middle of the evaluations for NHL franchises, which is kind of shocking considering the recent history that they've had.
Super shocking. I don't understand quite why that is, and I kind of want to dig into why. That's super interesting.
But I have seen a couple of articles that have said that the price is expected to be over $1 billion, which would be huge for the NHL from a financial standpoint. Like, it shows the financial health of the league.
The price is right, Bob. $1, Bob. $1 billion. It's
also nice to see an ownership group buy an NHL team that don't have any like glaring red flags attached to them. So like they're buying this team and you're like, oh, they might actually be okay as far as like a conglomerate of rich folks go. I think LeBron James is part of this sports group, so he technically will own a stake in the Pittsburgh Penguins now.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, the Boston Red Sox have never really seemed like they've had a, bad ownership gaffe. And if you run a Premier League franchise, like, you probably know what the fuck you're doing.
Well, especially one that has been as successful as Liverpool the last, 5 or 6 years. And they historically don't spend their money on gargantuan contracts. Like the Red Sox sold or traded Mookie Betts rather than pay him to the Dodgers. And then Mookie Betts signed like a $365 million contract.
Yeah.
There's rumors that they will not be re-signing or extending the contract of Mohamed Salah at Liverpool, who is their talismanic striker, or forward, I should say.
You really had to translate striker.
He's technically not a striker; he's a winger.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, he plays on the right.
I
side.
thought you were translating for the non-soccer watchers.
Firmino is technically their striker.
Ah.
Yeah.
It's cool to see. Didn't the Red Sox under what was his name? The GM there.
Which one?
The one that they got over the hump and won under.
Oh, Theo Epstein.
Theo Epstein. Like, wasn't that sort of like proto Moneyball? What he was doing behind the scenes?
It's like Moneyball with a lot more money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of the impression that I've always gotten. So
Yeah.
Sounds like it's going to be a good thing for the Penguins.
Yeah, it's a good thing for the league. It's awesome that good owners are taking over the Penguins, who are one of the, more profitable and more visible NHL franchises. Now, if they could just go buy the Sabres too, that would be great.
God, that would be so amazing. Or buy a PHF team or start a new PHF team.
And then just be like, oh, we're actually going to raise our salary cap to like 4 million.
It would be so good to divorce the Sabres from the Pagulas. Like, how do oil magnates fail at running a franchise so badly?
In other hockey news, the PHF season started, 2 weeks ago now. Unfortunately, for my hockey viewing capabilities, I was chasing my niece and nephew around all weekend, so I wasn't able to watch any games in week 2. Week 1, I was able to catch both of the Whale games against the Rivs and one of the Whitecaps games. It's been pretty, can I just say, fucking awesome so far.
Yeah, they've had a fast and furious couple of weeks.
Yeah, Boston beat Minnesota 6-4 in one of their first matchups of the season, which it's been a rough go for goaltending so far this season in the PHF. But that rough go for goaltending creates a lot of scoring, which creates a lot of awesome, fast hockey. What also happened in the first weekend, Emily Fluke punched Kelly Babstock in the face after a scuffle or a kerfuffle along the boards. And I'll be honest, I don't know the history there outside of the fact that Kelly Babstock was one of the Rivs players that went on Erica Nardini's podcast.
It just looked like a business hockey punch to me.
Yeah, but
like you pissed me off in the corners. You feel wrath of fist, and then I get 2 and 10 and go to the showers early.
Yeah, but like I was reading Twitter during the game and also reading like comments on the Ice Garden, and it was like, of course Emily Fluke punched Kelly Babstock. Like, of course it was Emily Fluke. And I'm like, so like I tried to dig into the history there, but couldn't really find anything. So if any of our listeners want to fill us in on why it's of course Emily Fluke punched Kelly Babstock, please do.
I got the feeling from the context of those tweets after you pointed it out that it's just like Emily Fluke's an aggressive player that is liable to punch you. Not that it was personal.
No, that's what I'm thinking too.
But also a lot of people were like, yeah, somebody Kelly Babstock. Like,
darn.
Know, yeah.
Yeah, people weren't sad about it.
I mean, if it was like actually, really outside the rules, people would maybe be upset about it. But it was just
it's
a glove on punch to the face. Like,
it was
just
a tap.
Just a hockey punch. Like,
Yeah.
just a cute little hockey punch.
It was. I mean, unless you're Kelly Babstock and you just got punched in the face, maybe. I don't know.
I mean, if that happened to me, I'd be pissed about it too. Like,
it has happened to me several times.
Well,
it's not great.
You deserve it more than I do.
Definitely. If somebody listening to this podcast hasn't figured out yet that I deserve to get punched in the face more than you, then you're not paying attention. As it sits, the leaders in the clubhouse are the Boston Pride. However,
shocked face.
Well, also they have played them and the Connecticut Whale have played more games than anybody else. Right now, Toronto and the Buttes have only played 1 game apiece, and the Rivs and the Whitecaps have played 2. So it's an unbalanced schedule thus far. So we don't have a real, true kind of idea yet or feeling yet as to how the league's going to go.
Yeah,
it is no shock to see Boston atop the leaderboard.
But it's easy to be on top of the leaderboard when you've played 4 games to some other team's 1.
Yeah. The other team that has played 4 games, the Connecticut Whale, are in second. I will say this, like, if they can either get some stronger goaltending or find some defense, they're going to crush Fools this season. They are scoring so many goals. They have 13 goals in 4 games.
That's the kind of hockey we like to watch.
Yeah, I'll be totally honest. I don't really care for a 1-0 game. I'm all about a 6-4 game unless my fantasy goalie is one of those goalies. So watching the track meets that have happened thus far has been awesome. The Pride and the Whale, I watched highlights again. I wasn't able to watch games this weekend, but honestly, it looked like 2 teams who are going to be seeing each other at the end of the season as well.
I don't know if most of this is, maybe 10-minute penalties or 5s getting handed out, but the Connecticut Whale have 46 penalty minutes, and the Boston Pride are second with 26. And I'm not mad. I'm just impressed.
Well, there was a game misconduct there for Emily Fluke.
Right. So that's 10.
That's 10.
But still.
Yeah.
That's
that also probably shows why the Whale, while scoring 13 goals in 4 games, have given up 14. So
yeah. Also on the bad end of the goal differential is my Minnesota Whitecaps. Even with the new loon pads their goalie is sporting.
They're great. I
encourage you to look up the loon pads.
They might be better than the fish pads, actually.
Yeah. Who knew that the fish pads could have
an alter ego?
I would say such a commanding sequel. Like that really, Hollywood would be so lucky to have such a good sequel to anything.
Yeah. What movie where there's only 2 is the second one better?
I can't think of the last sequel that was better than the first one. Dark Knight, maybe, but Batman Begins was really fucking good.
Dark Knight was way better than Dark Knight Rises.
Begins, but that's a trilogy. Begins would be the one though,
right? But that's a trilogy.
So you're discounting trilogies.
Only 2, yeah, because otherwise we could say Godfather 2 is probably better than Godfather 1.
Empire Strikes Back is the best Star Wars.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Real quick, what's your second Star Wars movie?
Second favorite Star Wars?
In the entire realm, not just the original trilogy.
I mean, it's just a toss-up between 4 and 6.
I
am kind of was always a partial to New Hope, but also I'm kind of a sucker for A, origin stories, and B, first things in any series of things. If there was a role-playing game or a tabletop game or a video game, I feel like I'm 75% guaranteed to pick the first type or option just because it's usually balanced and strong and the original. But yeah, I think that's a logical fallacy. There's a term for that.
The correct answer to my second best Star Wars question is Rogue One.
Oh,
It's a Vietnam movie in the Star Wars galaxy. It's incredible. It's so good.
I honestly, I have a soft spot in my heart for episode 1, and I would probably put that third.
I'm over this conversation.
As you should be.
Yeah, no, totally over it. Fuck this conversation. Well, I'm editing this whole thing out.
Back to PHF hockey.
Back to PHF hockey. So as we were saying, right now the standings are a little amok because the Whale and the Pride have played 4 games, whereas other teams have only played 1 or 2. That also goes for top scorers and stats.
Mm-hmm.
However, Alyssa Wolfeiler is having herself a year already. 4 goals, 1 assist in 4 games. Kennedy Marchment, who we talked about in our season preview as being one of the top potential newcomers.
Machine Gun Kennedy.
Yes. Has not disappointed at all. 2 goals, 3 assists so far. And my Jersey, Emma Vlasic, is also tied for first with 2 goals and 3 assists after 4 games. We're seeing a ton of scoring. We're seeing a ton of really rugged, fast action. And the PHF has absolutely not disappointed on any level at all so far. I am actually home this weekend, so I will actually be able to watch some more PHF. Thrilled to have that opportunity. And as always, go Pod.
Yeah, I'm absolutely enamored with Amanda Levier's Loon Pad. Please look them up.
We'll put them up on social media at some point, maybe tonight. And by tonight, I mean yesterday or 2 days ago because who knows when this will get
Is this
edited.
fucking Inception? Come on.
I have things to do tomorrow night, so I don't know when this will get edited.
Oh, okay. How's your PHF fantasy team doing?
They haven't released their first kind of like stats or their first kind of update. However, I have Kennedy Marchment and Emma Vlasic on my team, so probably okay.
Probably pretty good. Oh, I imagine they're probably waiting for the other teams to catch up.
Yeah, my team name is Down with the Vlasicness. And again, a shameless plug for the Ice Garden. If you care one iota about women's hockey and you are not already reading them, you should be. Their podcast is excellent. Their writing is excellent. They have a ton of good writers. Go check them out.
They're maybe the class of PHF writing right now.
Yeah, I mean, they put a ton of effort into it. They have really talented writers. Check them out. Honestly, if you care about women's hockey, you probably know about them, but
yeah, it's also a way to get into women's hockey is to, learn the narratives, the storylines. Like that's what I watch for. So reading them or Victory Press has been one of my biggest motivations to watch more of the games.
Going back to men's hockey, Sidney Crosby returned to the ice this week after, this is only his second game of the season. He has been hurt and then he got COVID.
Awful 1-2 combo.
Yeah, big bummer for Sidney. Also a bummer, he threw Martin Fehervey. Sidney Crosby threw him by his head into the boards. No penalty was called during the game. The Department of Player Safety weighed in to say, "Oh, that was cool. Nice job, bro. You're our best friend, Sidney Crosby." That's my George Peros impersonation. I think that's painfully accurate. So instead of suspending or fining Sidney Crosby for what is very clearly a dangerous...
Yeah, he wraps his fucking arms around the dude at full speed, going into the boards and hip tosses him. Like, Martin Fehervey's very lucky to not have escaped with a really bad injury.
I'm sorry for cackling during the middle of your segment there, but yeah.
That was the goal, right?
That was good. That was real good. Sidney Crosby did, however, get a coupon for 25% off all Violent Gentlemen apparel at the end of the season. Rumor has it that Sidney Crosby has picked out a pair of Violent Gentlemen Crocs.
Nazem Kadri, meanwhile, was suspended 36 games for reading a magazine in a hotel lobby.
How dare he?
Karan Driver, 36 games. Like, are you fucking kidding me?
He's lucky it wasn't Cat Fancy. Cat Fancy, whole season.
Dion Phaneuf retired to everyone's surprise because they were surprised that he was still a rostered player in the league.
I honestly didn't know this happened. Yeah. Congrats for pulling one out of the wool for me.
I mean, I think he was like between IR and like PTOs for a long time.
Yeah.
But he finally said Phaneuf is Phaneuf and hung up the skates.
That's enough out of you. Braden Coburn retired. Braden Coburn, who obviously will hold a soft spot in this podcast heart. He is a former Winterhawk.
And he won a cup.
He decided to hang it up officially via Twitter and Instagram and all those places. Congratulations on a career, man. Like, your name's on the cup. You did it right. Come back to Portland and hang out. If you want to talk with us, hint, hint. Congrats on a career, man. That if you can retire with your name on the cup, you've had a good go.
Yeah, he played 983 games over 16 seasons for 5 teams. He had played on the Senators and Islanders most recently. He was just, I think, kind of between injured and kind of too old. He was an 8th overall pick.
Oh, wow. Good for him.
Yeah, super interesting.
Speaking of too old, Andy Green played his... That's rude. Andy Green is still a very solid NHL player. Don't get me wrong.
I mean, no, I think he would probably also agree that he's too old for this shit.
He looks really old. He has kind of the same syndrome that I have, which is you're like only in your mid 30s, but also look like you might be 60. Which is to say he's devilishly handsome. 1,000 games is one hell of a benchmark to hit in the NHL, especially if you've been playing over the last couple of seasons, which have both been truncated, and he's still made it. Good for you. Yeah, he's up there with Uncle Lou on the aisle, and hopefully he'll get some playoff games this year and, round out his career in winning fashion after putting in some really gutsy shifts with bad Devils teams for a long time.
Yeah, for real. Like, talk about a good soldier. Speaking of too old, have you seen the official roster photo for Brett Connolly, technically of Chicago, now Rockford IceHawks?
It's terrifying, yeah.
He looks like Bobby Orr right when he retired. He looks like a guy that's seen some shit, and he's 29.
There's a 1,000-yard stare there that shouldn't be there. It's like he spends his off seasons as a bounty hunter, and like he comes back to hockey, and they're like, "Hey, Brent, well, how was your off season?"
And he's like, takes Mandalorian helmet off, and you're like, "Oh."
No, he like they ask him how his off season went, and he's like, "I don't talk about it." Like they're just like, "Okay, Brent, yeah, cool. Hey, have fun in Rockford."
I mean, maybe really the story is that's what being sent to Rockford, Illinois does to you. It takes a certain kind of person to survive in Rockford.
Well, hopefully Kendall Coyne Schofield is making it all right.
Yeah, I mean, she probably spends more time in Chicago, let's be honest.
Let's hope.
And then for our last but not least, Rem, Don't Call Me Tyler Pitlick, scored his first NHL goal and then decided it wasn't enough. And so he scored 2 more, scoring a natty hattie for his first 3 NHL goals.
That's good.
That's dope.
That's really good. If you're going to introduce yourself to the league, don't introduce yourself to the league with like some like crappy little rebound goal. Or if your first goal is a crappy little rebound goal, get 2 more.
Yeah, he went full Liza Minnelli and was like, "I'm here."
I believe that's the first time Liza Minnelli has been referenced on this podcast, and
let's hope it's the first of many.
Yeah, we should make that a habit. Congrats to Rem, like that. Again, way to announce yourself to the league.
I wonder, like, how many millions of dollars those extra 2 goals were worth the next time his contract gets negotiated. Like, I don't know. Maybe if he does like fucking nothing the rest of the year, he's gonna be like, remember that natty hattie,
the thing I did,
that thing
where I was good. Yeah, let's focus on that
thing you do. Well, I hope you can focus on the things that we did good today, because this has been another episode of the Handsome Hockey Podcast.
Thank you so much for listening. I'd also like to thank my brother for completely ruining my Tuesday by sending me a meme that included the video of when Shadow shows up at the end of Homeward Bound, and that shit ruins my day anytime it comes up. And my brother does it to me once a year, so shout out to my brother for just fucking burying me on a Tuesday. He's a rad dude, but
someone's got to put you in your place.
I'd rather
usually isn't me.
Not that way. I have a wife for that. I don't need my brother to do it also. It was abusive, borderline abusive.
The machinations of brothers it would take centuries to explain, and I would not know.
I'd prefer not to. Yeah. Mine is great, but
seems great.
It was a real downer. This is definitely like the 3rd year in a row he's done this to me, and I'm over it. I also found out that scene is a GIF, and all y'all, if I text you at all ever in my life, you're all gonna get ruined by this. And I
mean, you basically just gave out like the address to your kryptonite mine, right?
Yeah. If any of you, and like if somebody texts me back and says, "What is this?" Or if somebody texts me back and says, "This is stupid. Why did you send me?" We're no longer friends. Yeah. Like if you can't get down with Shadow and Homeward Bound 1, bye. Anyways,
if you want to pass the friendship test, you can find us on the internet at handsomehockey.com, Handsome Hockey Podcast on Instagram, at Handsome Hockey on Twitter, or handsomehockeypod@gmail.com, and the Handsome Hockey Facebook page.
You can find us all over the place if you are listening to podcasts. Chances are, if you're listening to this, you found us somewhere. However, if you're looking for us, or if you want to tell your friends about us and say,
Marco!
podcast, People hate us so much right now.
That was gold.
Anyways, if you want to tell your friends where to find us and they listen to podcasts where you don't, we are on Spotify, Apple, Google, and Amazon Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Overcast, Red Circle, and occasionally on YouTube.
Oh shit, I need to update the YouTube.
We, I think, still only have one listen on Google Podcasts. If you are that person, thank you. This has been episode 49 of the Handsome Hockey Podcast. Thank you for listening. Take care, everybody. Stay warm. It's getting cold. And stay handsome, everybody.
Restez beau, tout le monde.